Welcome to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet. Breathe, eat, sleep, thrive in every aspect of your life. What does thriving actually mean? Thriving is not a word, it's an action, a way of living. And that's what the Best Living Show is all about. So get ready, step into a new narrative, and find a new way of being. There's a beautiful connection, a spark that flies at the intersection between the genetic code and your internal guidance system. We're going to throw away the culture that would tell us that thriving is something only for a few. Every one of us is unique. It's our time to discover why. The Best Living Show starts now. Hello, and welcome to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet. And tonight we're going to be talking all about the essentials of good sleep. So just before we start, this podcast is for informational purposes only. And if you're having any serious chronic medical issues related to sleep, you should absolutely consult with your regular and primary physician. What I'm going to be talking about today is really about enhancing your sleep, maximizing the benefits of your sleep for health and well-being. At the end of the day, you're absolutely in charge of your health, and you should get all the information about whatever is going on or what's not going on. And if there's any products or things that I mentioned during the show, get all the information that you can before changing or starting anything. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about why I chose to talk about sleep. I've been interested in sleep for quite a while. Back in grad school, I thought I might actually study sleep science, work in a sleep lab, doing sleep studies. And I even took some courses on it and also courses on dreaming. And that was very fascinating. Although I think most of the time the class wanted to know about my dreams, which was interesting because I seem to have the most vivid dreams. It's something I've never had a problem with is dreaming. But it's something that I've always been fascinated with. And in the book that I released earlier this year, Expressive Origins, I dedicate an entire chapter to sleep and why it is so important to you. Also, in earlier episodes of the podcast, which you can find at drrachelsweet.com, we talked to Kim Colony all about sleep as it related to menopause. So definitely check that out, because I'm not really going to be covering anything related to sleep and menopause, because we kind of did that earlier this year. So again, for me, sleep is super important. And the reason why is I feel like it is foundational. It is, to me, the bed that everything else sits on. So sleep is the foundation of health, and then the pillows and the blankets are all your diet and exercise and everything else that dresses it. Your sleep is what really builds it all up. And it is really the quality of sleep that is most significant predictor of longevity and health span. And one of the quotes that I mentioned in my book was by Judith Carroll, assistant professor of psychiatry at UCLA. And she said, sleep is rarely mentioned as a pillar of health. Yet there's a considerable body of evidence that suggests the quality of good sleep, or the good quality sleep, may be just as important to your overall health as other lifestyle factors like diet and exercise. So again, what she's saying here is we focus a lot on what are we eating, how we're working out, and that is super important. But oftentimes it's how we're living or sleeping that is affecting our living. So it makes sense, right? Because we spend a third of our lives. I mean, think about that. If you're sleeping 8 hours and 24 hours, we have a third of our lives that we are sleeping. And so often when I'm working with clients, it's one of the first factors that I ask about. If they're coming in with some lifestyle change they want to make, or like they're feeling fatigued, tired, overwhelmed, even, maybe they've got some stress going on, I always ask first about their sleep. Because as I'll talk about as we go through the show, sleep really does drive so much of our physiology. And, my friend and colleague gave a great example in the book of how she does the same thing with someone who came in to lose weight. And she said, well, let's talk about your sleep. And they kind of said, wait a second, what? Why are we talking about sleep? I want to lose weight. And they're like, yes, but it's because we want to look at that will help. And sure enough, there was some things there that they could modify that then helped her lose weight. So sleep is really one of the first places that I go to when I'm doing an evaluation. And it's really because, as we said, it is the foundation and it supplies all of our energy that we need so that we can exercise, eat the right foods, and control our weight. And then also, it's crucial for metabolic functioning, hormone balance, and our immunity. There's a great quote from Dr. Kurt Parsley. He's a sleep expert, and he says that sleep deprivation, so if we're cutting into our sleep, it really numbs us to our environment and it decreases the whole purpose of being here. And that's really, what we're talking about on this show is because, we're all about thriving and intentional thriving and really enjoying our life as much as possible. And, we want to create our best life ever that's full of discovery, adventure, family, and having those memories. And part of that is, living and feeling our best that we can. And to me, it starts with sleep. So when I evaluate sleep, not only am I asking clients how they're sleeping and how they're perceiving their sleep, but I'm also looking at their base genetics too. If we look at on a genetic level, we have clock genes. And we've talked a little bit about this before in previous episodes. And these clock genes are our body's internal clock. And it regulates our circadian rhythms, which control various processes throughout our body, including our sleep. And so these clock genes, they help control the timing of when we feel awake and when we feel sleepy. Now, when we look at genetics, yes, everybody can have a different genetic predisposition. Some people need less sleep, some people need more sleep. Some people are more restless, some people wake up more during the night. So when we do a genetic evaluation, we're looking not like what you would do with ancestry. We're looking at lifestyle factors that are really connected to nutrition, athletics, hormones, detoxification pathways, and of course, we're looking at sleep. And so this simple cheek swab gives us this baseline genetic blueprint. And from there, we have this modulation system that sits across that base genetic blueprint, which is our epigenome. And with that, we can start to modulate those genetics. Now, clock genes are very old. They are harder ones to modulate, but other parts of the sleep process can be modulated. And I'll talk about some of my own examples of how I did this myself and adjusting my expression of my underlying genetics. And because, if we don't like how our genetics are expressing, if they're disrupting a process or a part of our lifestyle, we would want to, as best possible, to modify that. So now, if we have chronic disruptions in clock genes, this can lead, of course, to sleep disorders such as insomnia, and it can play a role even in creating certain mood disorders, depression and anxiety and things like that. So these clock genes are instrumental to quite a few parts of our physiology. So we can dive in a little bit about kind of the processes of sleep now. When we're looking at sleep, it's broken into a couple of parts. We're talking about rapid eye movement, and then we're talking about non-rapid eye movement. And then non-rapid eye movement is further divided into three other stages, which is wake, light sleep, and deep sleep. And if you have some kind of device, like I have a Garmin, or if you have a Fitbit or a Ring, then you've seen these different stages, and you've probably monitored these parts of your sleep, these phases. And at each phase, there are different muscle tones, brainwave patterns, and eye movements, of course, that occur in these different stages. Now, REM sleep, most people understand that that is a dreaming stage of sleep, and it's usually where the most vivid dreams occur. It's also the stage where brain processes and memories are consolidated. So whatever happened during the day, or maybe over the last few days, might get consolidated in there. And so you might find in your dreams things that have happened or something similar that might have happened in the last couple of days gets kind of interwoven into your dreams, or maybe something that you were thinking about like ends up in your dreams. So it's a very interesting process. It also can be quite useful during grad school because it is a memory consolidation stage. When I was studying, I used to use this to my advantage by studying before I would go to bed with low light, of course. I'm going to talk about that. But I would study, and then my dreams became almost like my rehearsal for studying. And I could continue to study at night. I know it doesn't sound like it's a very restful process, but it would allow me then during my time when I was taking the exam to recall and remember information easier because I had done it before going to sleep. A lot of people will write questions down or do problem solving and things like that before they go to sleep. And really, this creative stage of REM sleep is where a lot of that is happening. All right, so the other part, the non-REM sleep, is part of that is deep sleep. This happens early on in when we go to sleep, shortly after we go to sleep. That is what occurs in the beginning part of the night, and REM occurs more towards the morning. So this is why it's important not to curtail your sleep, because your deep sleep is in the first part, REM is in the second part. So if you're cutting like either end, you could be cutting into those parts of your sleep, and not getting the quality and quantity that you need. So when we're looking, so if you analyze if you have some kind of device that's measuring your sleep and you look at it, you want to look at how long you're spending in deep sleep or in REM sleep. If we say we're sleeping 7 hours, then you should be getting about 25% from deep sleep, 25% from REM sleep, and then the other 50% will be broken up between these, what we call micro awakenings, when we're shifting, or maybe there's a sound or something, and then light sleep. And light sleep, again, it's very important, and that occurs at these different intervals throughout the night. So if we're sleeping 7 hours, then we should be looking about getting an hour and a half to an hour 45 minutes of deep sleep, and the same with our REM sleep. I know for me, when I started this, REM was usually pretty good. As I said, I was a good dreamer, but deep sleep was not as long as I wanted. And then also I started to see a lot of these awakenings during the night. So this was something that I wanted to investigate further. And I could see within my genetics that I had that predisposition to those awakenings. And I was able, through my changing some of my diet, and what I was eating, that helped with reducing some of this, and some supplementation as well. And then recently, I've done some further changes, and I've really been able to extend deep sleep now, to sometimes up to 2 hours, which is great because that's really good quality, restful sleep. Deep sleep is really what we want for recovery. So if you're exercising a lot, or you like to run marathons, whatever, you want to get that good quality sleep, deep sleep for recovery. So for a lot of my life, I thought I was a night person. I preferred to stay up late, and get up late. I even had some jobs early on in my 20s where I would work later at night and then sleep, till noon, those kind of things. And my mom would tell people all the time, oh, she is not a morning person. She's very groggy and don't talk to her in the morning kind of thing. So when I looked at my genetics, I was so surprised when I went over it with my genetic coach. It said I was a morning person. I'm like, how can this be? I am not a morning person. And it said that I should sleep. My ideal sleep schedule was like go to bed between 8 and 10 and wake up at like between 4 a.m. and 6. I'm like, 4 a.m. and 6? Like, okay, crazy. But as I've done a lot of more genetic reads on people, I have found that most people are actually fall within this. They are morning people, like myself, even though we might think that we are night owls, but there are definitely evening preferences, but I have not seen a lot of people that actually have the genetics for it. A lot of what's happening is other parts of our genes are coming in, and there could be also environmental factors that are playing into that, the way that we're triggering our circadian rhythms, for instance. And we get into that kind of routine and shift our internal clock later. And so we feel like that's what we should be doing. As I looked at my genetics, though, I did see that there are some what we call SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, that did have an evening preference. So I thought, okay, I must be expressing those a little bit. But then I also found in there that I had a propensity for increased morning fatigue. And I thought, yeah, that's definitely it. I have that and the t-shirt to match it. I don't, that says I don't do mornings, you know? So, I think that some of my evening SNPs do come into play a little bit. If I had my own way, I would definitely have more of a kind of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Kind of schedule, but strive for that 7 hours of good quality sleep. But sometimes life with work or whatever your things are, you do have to try and fit. But I fit it as much as I can within my propensity for my genetics, and it as I said, it has improved other parts of my sleep. So one of the things that I want to talk about now is how we set our clocks. So clocks are set by light, and they are also driven by temperature. So we're going to take a break here in a minute, and I will come back and talk about how light and temperature now affect your sleep. And it's how we can start to regulate those clocks so that we are putting ourselves in the best position to work with our genetics and to have the best sleep that we can. All right. We'll be right back on the Best Living Show. Hello, and welcome back to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachelle Sweet, and today we are talking all about the essentials of good sleep. So before the break, we were talking all about the different cycles of sleep, and we had talked a little bit about genetics and epigenetics of sleep, just kind of touching on that. And now I really wanted to go into how our clock genes are regulated so that we have good sleep onset. And really, that all begins with light in the morning. So obviously our clocks, they're not like little dials with numbers. We actually doesn't know exactly what time it is, but it does know, our cells within our eye know the levels of light. And so when we get light after sunrise, it signals to the body wake up time, and it allows the clock to then start running, if you like. So in the morning with sunrise, you want to be able to go out into the daylight with some of that low, kind of more low light, not overhead, more the low light. So a few hours after. So right now, obviously, I'm in the Northern Hemisphere. So this is, sunrise is kind of around 7. So I, walk slowly from my car into the gym or to work. And I don't have any sunglasses on, and you don't want to view the light through a window or through the windscreen or anything like that, because you're just not getting the light penetrating in there. It's really important to actually be outside. You don't want to stare, obviously, into the sun, but you do want to be outside for a minute to, depending on how much cloud cover and things are, there may be a few minutes outside. And what that does is that light hits the cells in your eye. It signals to the brain, and it says it's time to wake up. And you get a little push of cortisol, a little push of epinephrine or adrenaline, and that starts the process of your circadian rhythms counting. And then there's another process then that starts and says in 14 hours or so, you're going to start a hormone called melatonin. And melatonin is the hormone that helps us sleep. So getting this yellowy blue light, and I know you've probably heard, don't get blue light, but you do need this yellowy blue light in the morning, helps wake you up. And that's super important to help you sleep at night. When you don't want the blue light, then you want more shifted orange and kind of red lights at that point. But this is really how it is activated. Then it's kind of run by body temperature. And so if you're, have a tracker that looks at your body temperature, you can see this fluctuating throughout the day, but our body temperature is always fluctuating. And it's the lowest part of our temperature that our body is in the early morning around 4 a.m. So you probably know you're pulling the covers on at one point, right? Oh, it's getting cold because your body temperature has reduced. And then your body temperature slowly rises. And then in the afternoon, early evening, there is a peak in core body temperature, and then it begins to drop again until, again, it reaches that lowest point in the morning. And so what this core body temperature tells the brain and all the hormonal processes is that this dropping in body temperature is associated with an onset of sleep. So as body temperature decreases, it signals to the body time to unwind, time to slow down, time to prepare for sleep. And it's also then looking for that equal signal, which is the low level light coming in, or, sunset kind of light of the oranges and yellows. So it's really looking at those two things to keep our circadian rhythms in the right order. Now, it doesn't have to be the exact time. You don't have to run outside every morning, 7 a.m., stand outside for 2 minutes. No, it can be around the same time. And you do want to try and keep it as consistent as possible, but your body will adjust it to like an average of when you get that light. And, in the evening, you do want to, if you're going to bed around 10, you do want to start to eliminate a lot of overhead light. If you can shift some of the light bulbs in some of the, like a desk lamp or side table lamps, to more of an orange or red color, this red will not activate and will continue, your body will continue to process and wind down and produce melatonin. So, that's how kind of the system is activated and between these two things. So let's talk about a little bit about the amount of sleep, because a lot of people will say, oh, I don't need that much sleep. And it is possible they have genetics for a short sleep cycle. It is possible. I myself have genetics for a sleep or a short cycle, but I still find that getting too little sleep affects me. So for me, a good minimum is 6.5 hours. And the research does show that between 6.5 to 7.5 hours is really good for most adults. Now, some people do have a longer time and can sleep much longer. And, that's really good. And so if you can start to improve and reinforce your circadian rhythm with that good light exposure, also temperature will come into that as well, and then keep everything as consistent as possible, even on the weekends. I know it's tempting to, stay up later on the weekends, but you still want to keep everything as consistent as possible and getting that 6.5 hours. Now, the amount of time that you actually might spend in bed is a bit longer. So you'll want to make sure, because, if you have those, like I did, micro awakenings in the beginning, I had upwards of an hour of those, those are small disruptions of your sleep. So for me, with that kind of hour of micro awakenings, that cuts down. Like, so if I'm in bed from, 10 until say 6, I'm losing an hour because of those micro awakenings. So now I'm down to 7. And then if anything else like disrupts, or I'm a bit late going to bed, or I have to get up a little bit early or something, again, that's going to cut down the actual amount of time for sleep. So a lot of times people think about, oh, well, I just go to bed, at 10 and I wake up at 4, and I'm getting 6 hours of sleep. And that's not always the case if we actually look at the amount of sleep that you're having. So you definitely want to be consistent. You want to make sure that you're actually in bed for a little bit longer, especially with, if you have some of that micro awakenings. So one of the other interesting things about sleep, and this is something that was discovered recently, actually past decade or so, was that the brain actually has a waste management system. So during the day, our brain cells, they primarily absorb glucose, oxygen, right? It's and through that is like a digestion process. There are waste products that need to be disposed of. And so they call this waste management system the glymphatic system. This is the system that basically takes the trash out at night into the other part networks of the brain, disposes of it, the periventricular network, and it cleans and revitalizes the brain. So this is another reason why getting good quality sleep and length of sleep is super important, because you want to make sure that your brain actually goes into this process and cleans and gets rid of this debris. There's some research that's showing that some brain disorders, cognitive decline, things like that, can actually be linked to this waste management system not occurring and not happening. So this is another reason why it's really important to have a good quality and good length of sleep so that we can revitalize the brain. So what's affecting a lot of this? So we've got light, we've got temperature, but it's also other lifestyle choices that we make. So sometimes it can actually even be our sleeping position that we're choosing. And some of that can do with the quality of our bed, the quality of our pillows. That can really make an effect also. If we're drinking alcohol, or prescription or non-prescription drug use can also absolutely affect our quality of sleep. Exercise for sure. And then, different supplements that we're taking, how we're eating, because if you look at the research of Dr. Sachin Panda, he's very much into the circadian rhythms and how our lifestyle fits the circadian rhythms as far as eating, as far as exercising. And it seems that within the body, there is an optimal time for exercise. So it seems like for exercise, for instance, 30 minutes after we wake up, or 3 hours after we wake up, or 11 hours after we wake up. These are the times when it's optimal to exercise. And it seems that in the research that this is really optimal because of temperature in our body, and also how our muscles are functioning, and there's a reduction in injuries and things like that. This is what the research has shown. Also then diets really can play a part in this circadian rhythm and then also affect our sleep. So all of these lifestyle choices that we make, even chronic stress, and how we sleep, modulating this clearance system, if we're choosing lifestyle choices or that are depriving us of sleep, there's just definitely growing evidence that we can be contributing more to neurodegeneration, and brain disorders, and that this accumulation of the waste products in our brain, if we're not getting that good sleep, can really contribute to that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how we can improve sleep. So we talked about the light. And so one of the things is your environment. We want to make sure that our bedroom can be reduced down as dark as possible. I know some people like to have night lights and things like that. Choose a night light that is very dim. You're going to plug it in at a low level because of how that light would hit your eye if you have to get up to go to the bathroom in the night. You don't want anything that's going to activate that circadian rhythm and make it say it's time to get up. So for me, blackout blinds, for me, no light whatsoever. I have red lights. I keep those in my bedside lamps. My bathroom also, I have shifted to red lights. So if I do need to switch on a light in the night, to be able to see, it's a red light and it won't activate that circadian clock. So, we definitely want to minimize light because, as we said, that's what activates it. Temperature is the other thing. We want to maintain a very cool temperature for better sleep. Ideally, and again, this is going to depend on where you live. So here I'm, living in the north of the northern hemisphere. It's very easy to keep my room temperature at between 60 and 67. That seems to be, in the research, the ideal. However, I've lived in more tropical, hot regions, and trying to keep temperature that low would make very, very cold if you're used to living in 80, 90 degrees. So I think there is some a little bit of relativity there, but definitely want to keep the temperature cooler at night, so that you can sleep better. There's also a lot of products now that help with sleeping. So like the bed, you can get beds that are cooling. There's something called a sleep aid too that regulates the temperature throughout the night. So you definitely want to look into some of those things so that it naturally aligns with your core temperature drop that is, as we said, is going towards 4 a.m. being cooler. So now, a lot of people like to have TVs and electronics in the bedroom. I would highly recommend that you don't, because the artificial light from these devices can delay the melatonin release. And so, as we talked about, each hormone has its cycle and interacts with another hormone. If you're delaying the release of melatonin by artificial light, such as TV and other devices, then this will translate to when the disruption of waking up will occur. And then you might get that hangover, grogginess, and those kind of things. And you're not getting the cortisol push quite when you need it, or the adrenaline and serotonin as well, which is the waking hormone. So all of this and in your environment plays into your hormonal process at night. and, you know, your body temperature. And so the signaling and the activation of that. So, you know, make this room as best you can. If your partner is cold, they can get a blanket. The other thing that I would recommend is to keep, if possible, a clock out, or if you have a clock, face it the other way so you're not watching time. You want to make sure that you're in bed for the amount of time. If it's 8 hours, to get your 7 hours of sleep, you stay in bed as much as possible, even if you're awake, just to keep training your circadian rhythm that this is the time for bed. And that will help keep all of this in alignment. All right, so we've talked about the environment, and we're going to take a quick break now, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some other factors that help with this. We're going to talk about maybe some supplements, dieting, and how this also affects sleep and the circadian rhythm. We'll be right back on the Best Living Show. Hello, and welcome back to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachelle Sweet, and we are talking all about the essentials of getting good sleep. And before the break, we were talking about how light and temperature are really important, especially within your sleeping environment. And we were talking about red light and how red light, which is a longer wavelength and warmer reddish hue, of course, is better for having an impact. It has a weaker impact on melatonin. So it allows melatonin to come out and help you go to sleep. And avoiding blue-green light, and it's in the evening, of course, is very beneficial. Even if you're shifting your phone to a dim setting, it can still activate because, it's right in front of your face. So I would say at least an hour, preferably 2 hours before, if you can start to wind down those devices that put off that blue and green light, and then shift to the red light. It's going to be so much more beneficial, calming, relaxing. Think about fireplaces, candles. Those things are usually more smoothing and relaxing. They create and conduce that idea of winding down. So that was what we were talking about before the break. So I want to mention a little bit about supplements, because a lot of times people will say, what can I take to sleep better? There's so many products on the market. Now, one of the, of course, the biggest ones is melatonin. You'll see in a lot of formulated supplements, there's melatonin in there. I will say melatonin is a hormone. It's not well regulated. And so what's actually in the supplement can vary between products. Sometimes it's very little, like 15%, even though it says it's so many milligrams on the package. Sometimes it could be way more. So you have to be careful when using melatonin. I've used it myself in the past. It does help with people who have jet lag. It seems to help work well with if you're traveling and you take it once you get to a new location and you want to kind of onset your sleep and it really adjust your cycle. You can do that. It does also help with shift workers sometimes who get kind of sleep disorders. But it is a powerful hormone. And so some people are genetically very fast metabolizers, so it might help them go to sleep, but it won't help them stay asleep. Some are very slow metabolizers of melatonin, so it might actually linger longer, especially if they find a supplement that has maybe more in it than they expected, that can then, kind of give them some grogginess. And some people can just have reactions of headaches and other things that could. So I would just recommend, if that's something that you want to try or use, that you really take a very low dose, or maybe try other supplements. There's a lot of herbal supplements out there that will help. You can get teas and things like that that will help with sleep. Valerian root, passion flower, these are natural remedies that have been used for centuries to help with insomnia and anxiety. And certainly I've used, I love tea. A bedtime tea that might have valerian, catnip, chamomile, lavender, any of those are very calming and relaxing and promote. So you can even have like a ritual if you like at night. You dim the lights down. I have mine on timer, so it goes from like an orange light to the red light over time, kind of like the sun setting, right? I'm kind of inducing that in my living room. I then, make sure that as that happens, I'm putting my phone away, get my tea. You can create a real ritual out of this that it really creates that relaxation and allows your body to come down. There are also a lot of other supplements that you'll know that other people recommend out there. Magnesium is one of them. I do think magnesium is very beneficial to overall health. There's a couple of different types of magnesium you can use. Magnesium plays a role in muscle and nerve function. So if you have maybe you move around a lot at night, or you're restless, this could really help perhaps with that. So there's a couple of magnesium biglycinate is one of the ones that people recommend for sleep. I've used that before in the past also. Magnesium threonate is one that helps with cognition if you really want to kind of improve mental capacity. I have shifted from those to a full spectrum magnesium because it has several different magnesiums in it that all are essential for the body, and I take that about 30 minutes or so before I go to bed. Again, check and make sure with your physician that these are things, if you want to try them, that you can use. So because I don't use the magnesium biglycinate in particular, I then add glycinate to my routine. Glycinate is, or glycine, sorry, is a amino acid. And it's really had a lot of studies looking at how it improves sleep quality, helps you fall asleep faster, helps you get more deep restorative sleep, which is definitely something that you want to focus on. Vitamin D is something else I always recommend that people take. You can actually test your vitamin D through blood work and see if you have a deficiency. And I would highly, highly recommend doing that because it is so important, and it also helps with regulating sleep. It plays a role in the body's circadian rhythm that we talked about early on in the podcast, in this episode. And the sleep-wake cycle. So if you have a deficiency in vitamin D, then it's important to look at that and then supplement with that to bring those levels up. So it's another supplement I think is really great. So then there's quite a few other ones. There's, I think it's Apigen, which is one that I take. That is part of it's a synthesis of the chamomile flower. So it's again that formation of relaxation. Some people like L-theanine. L-theanine is also an amino acid that's found in tea leaves, particularly green tea, and it has a very calming effect. It helps reduce anxiety. What I found with theanine, and I've found it with other people, is it really increased sleep, the dreaming, the REM part of sleep, to the point where it could be too vivid or even towards nightmares. So if you're a good dreamer, I would not recommend L-theanine. But if you want to improve your REM sleep, you're not having much REM sleep, L-theanine seems to help with that. Again, be careful if you're adding these supplements, because you can do experiments, but you want to make sure that they're going to be beneficial for you. There's also a lot of other products out there. A lot of people do 5-HTP, which is a precursor to serotonin. This is a neurotransmitter that helps with our mood. It works in some people don't like it. Again, it is a precursor to a neurotransmitter. So again, be careful with it. Some CBD cannabinoids also are helping with relaxation. Again, you want to look at kind of how you add that, but kind of a basic sleep. You want magnesium, you want glycine of some sort, And then perhaps adding on some of these other ones. I happen to add the chamomile apigen to mine. Some people do add on GABA. GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. This is also a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in various functions of sleep. It has an inhibitory effect on the central nervous system, so it actually promoting relaxation, sleep, bringing the excitability of the brain down. And I mention this because in our genetics, there is a SNP called the GAD1 gene, which is, it helps, if you have this particular SNP, it decodes an enzyme that is responsible for turning glutamate into GABA. And if you have an expression of this that doesn't work as well, then kind of a variation in this, then the function is decreased and it keeps the brain excited. So maybe a lot of thoughts, ruminating. That's how I found it to be for me. It's a lot more excitatory in the brain. So some people add GABA. There's not a lot of good research that shows that it crosses the blood-brain barrier, but some people do use it to help with reducing those kind of thoughts, that interference, that high kind of stress level at night. So again, it's something, if you want to see how that works, you can. But one of the biggest things I found for this, in particular for the GAD1 gene expression, and this idea of transmitting glutamate to GABA in the brain, was actually changing my diet. So what this gene is affected by is things like MSG and flavorings and things like that. And I really started to take a lot of these out of my diet. So anything that said, even natural flavors, because natural flavors is kind of this bucket that a lot of things get added into. And it could be natural, it could be essences of lemon or whatever, but in a lot of cases, it's not. It's some kind of synthetic flavoring that's being added. And this excites this particular gene. And then that activates neurons, and it starts to upregulate and express and cause this somewhat anxiety or nervousness or stress, when going to sleep. So for me, I really started to look at my diet, take a lot of those things out, and this really helped. It was quite amazing. I even felt like some of the brain fog, like some of the just even my memory, I felt like improved from doing this, and really really helped. So again, looking at your expression of genes and how they interact with all of these things can really affect your sleep. One other thing I wanted to mention, obviously there's a lot of foods, things like caffeine, spicy foods like that. We definitely want to, these are stimulants. We want to keep those to early on in the day, maybe avoid the spicy food before bedtime. A lot of people talk about not eating 3 hours before bed because you want to your digestion shuts down, and you want to make sure that you're not working on digestion, you're working on sleep. So there's a lot of research out there. Of course, alcohol is another one that, it is a sedative and it does make people fall asleep quicker, but it interferes with the normal sleep-wake cycle. And in fact, if you drink a lot, you will see that your REM sleep will be highly decreased. And of course, we want that REM sleep. That's part of our creativity and, it's our consolidation and those kind of things. So really also start to look at some of the lifestyle things. You can really, if you have a tracker, you can really start to see how some of these things affect your sleep. Well, sleep, as you can see, is a big topic. There's a lot to discuss, and I feel like I've just scratched the surface with this, but I feel like I've given you a good base to start with. Light, temperature, the environment, and then start to look at kind of supplements and food and how that is affecting your sleep. There's a lot that we can do with with improving sleep, and I know I've done it for myself and clients to help them. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can certainly visit drrachelsweet.com, where you can even have a discovery call to ask me questions if you would like to know more about your particular sleep situation and what might help for you. So that's drrachelsweet.com. You'll also see a tab there for the podcast and all the previous episodes. And you can catch up on some of those back episodes. So I really have enjoyed speaking with you this evening about the essentials of good sleep. And I will be back soon with another podcast. Thanks for watching and listening to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet. Thanks for listening to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet. Breathe, eat, sleep, thrive in every aspect of your life on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in Thursdays at 6 p.m. to continue your new narrative and step into a new way of being. We are not what people have told us we are. We are so much more than that. I am going to help you thrive and get the answers you desire, not only in the external world, but on the inside. For more information, go to drrachelsweet.com. That's drrachelsweet.com.